you wouldn't last a week. And I mean that literally. If someone dropped you right now, no jacket, no fire, no shelter, into Europe 20,000 years ago, you'd be dead in days. Maybe hours. We're not talking a rough winter. We're talking the peak of the last ice age. Temperatures regularly crashing to -30°C. Massive ice sheets, some over a mile thick, had swallowed up entire continents. Northern Europe was basically Mars with snow. There were no grocery stores, no hospitals, no gas heaters, no YouTube tutorials on how to survive. Just frozen tundra, brutal wind that stripped the warmth from your body in minutes. And roaming through all of it, giant cave bears, packs of massive wolves, woolly mammoths the size of small trucks. And somehow, your ancestors were already there. Not passing through, living there, hunting there, raising children there. For tens of thousands of years in the harshest conditions Earth ever threw at a human species. Here's what gets me though. These weren't superhumans. Biologically, they were basically us. Same brain, same body, same absolutely terrible natural insulation. We're essentially naked compared to every other large animal that made it through this period. No fur, no claws. No built-in ability to hibernate. Just a big brain, a few tools, and the refusal to die. This is the story of how they figured it out. Strategy by strategy. Invention by invention. How they turned one of the most brutal periods in Earth's history into something they not only survived, but actually won. Let's start with the obvious one, fire. But here's what people miss: fire wasn't just warmth. The Ice Age, fire was everything. It meant cooking frozen meat when it was too tough to eat raw. It meant light during 18-hour polar nights. It meant driving predators back. It was the difference between eating and starving, and breathing and not. Keeping a fire alive in sub-zero temperatures. That was its own war. Evidence shows these humans obsessively tended their fires, carrying live embers when they moved, wrapped in bone containers, so they'd never have to start from scratch. Flint and pyrite stones for making sparks were traded like treasure. And in areas with almost no wood, which was most of the tundra, they figured out how to burn animal bone and fat. Mammoth fat fed fires that burned at over 600 degrees Celsius. They engineered their own fuel source from the landscape itself. Now here's the part that gets slept on completely: clothing. People imagine a caveman wrapped loosely in a bearskin. That's not even close. The earliest evidence of humans deliberately skinning animals for hides goes back 300,000 years. Cut marks on bare bones tell us that. But the real revolution came around 30,000 years ago with one invention: the sewing needle. Carved from ivory and bone, tiny holes bored through with a flint drill. Archaeologist Brian Fagan called it the most important invention in human history. The needle meant tailored, layered clothing. Multiple skins stitched together, moisture-wicking inner layers, insulating middle layers, waterproof outer shells. Fitted to the body so no cold air could slip in. And archaeologists found something wild. Thread from this era dyed in colors like turquoise and pink. These people weren't just surviving. They were crafting, fire sorted, clothing sorted. But where do you sleep? This is where things get genuinely insane. In most of the Ice Age landscape, there were no caves, no natural shelter, just open tundra, wind coming from every direction, and temperatures that would kill you in hours if you stopped moving. So humans built their own. In 1965, a Ukrainian farmer was expanding his cellar and dug up something massive: a mammoth jawbone. Archaeologists were called in. What they uncovered at the site, now called Measurich, took years to understand. Circular shelters, built almost entirely from mammoth bones. Not a few scattered bones. 149 mammoth bones per structure. Mammoth skulls as the foundation, tusks and giant thigh bones forming the walls, animal hides stretched across the top. Each structure between 6 and 10 meters wide. A new study using precise radiocarbon dating placed one of them at exactly 18,248 years ago, right at the most brutal phase of the entire last ice age. And one of these structures shows evidence of being used for up to 429 years. That's generational. That's great-grandchildren living in the same building their great-grandparents built. Inside, a central fire hearth. Outside, storage pits packed with frozen food. The doorway, deliberately designed as a cold trap, a low-angled entrance so cold air sank while warm air stayed locked inside. That is thermodynamics. That is architectural engineering, done with bone and hide. In areas where natural rock overhangs existed, humans modified them, draping animal hides from the rock edges to block wind, positioning fires to reflect heat off stone walls. These people were architects 18,000 years before the first city. Shelter sorted. Now what do you eat? In winter, the hunts became scarce. Rivers froze. Edible plants died or buried themselves under meters of ice. The land locked up its resources and waited. But here's the twist: these humans turned winter's own weapon against itself. They used the killing cold as a refrigerator. Ice pits, deep holes cut into the permafrost, stored mammoth meat for months without spoiling. Cold ponds preserved whole carcasses under the ice. And in autumn, before the worst cold hit, they stockpiled, smoking, drying, and freezing enough meat to survive months of near-total scarcity. One study found that early humans at a cave site near Tel Aviv, 420,000 years ago, were strategically storing animal leg bones rich in marrow and fat for delayed consumption. They planned ahead, months ahead. That's a level of foresight we didn't think existed that early. Every calorie mattered. Bone marrow became a critical survival food, cracked open and boiled into a fat-rich soup when other food ran out. Now there's another part of the cold that would kill you even if you had food, your body's surface losing heat constantly. Solution: tallow. Entered animal fat rubbed directly onto exposed skin. It seals moisture in, slows heat loss, and works as a physical barrier against freezing air. Arctic explorers still use the same principle today. And then there's something that sounds insane until you understand it: bone slit goggles. Thin strips of bone with tiny slits carved into them, worn over the eyes to prevent snow blindness, a condition where the reflected UV off bright snow permanently damages your vision in hours. These people made sunglasses out of bone, but the final survival tool was the hardest to manufacture and couldn't be built alone: each other. Larger groups shared body heat, shared kills, shared knowledge across generations. The Ice Age was not survived by lone geniuses, it was survived by communities. Now we get to the part that genuinely keeps scientists up at night. Everything we've covered: fire, clothing, bone shelters, food storage, goggles, community — that explains how modern humans survived. Homo sapiens, people basically identical to you and me. But there were other humans before us, older ones, and their bones tell a different story. In 1976, archaeologists in northern Spain were excavating a 50-foot vertical shaft dropping into a cave called Sima de los Huesos, the pit of bones. Inside, thousands of fossilized human remains, 430,000 years old, long before Homo sapiens even existed. These were probably Homo heidelbergensis, early predecessors to Neanderthals. When scientists analyzed the bones with modern imaging and CT scanning, they found something strange. Seasonal patterns in bone growth, disruptions, lesions that matched almost exactly what you find in the bones of hibernating animals, cave bears specifically. Vitamin D deficiency consistent with months without sunlight exposure. Seasonal pattern of bone damage that healed every year. Annual growth interruptions in teenagers. The researchers' conclusion: these ancient hominins may have entered a form of hibernation during the harshest winter months. Not full bear-level stasis necessarily, but a significant metabolic slowdown that would have reduced their calorie needs drastically and allowed them to survive winters when there simply wasn't enough food or fire to keep going. One researcher said it directly: a strategy of hibernation would have been the only solution for them to survive. Now this is still debated. Strong evidence not conclusive. Some scientists push back hard. But this: your ancestors faced the most brutal climate in human history and found a way through it. Whether by engineering, community, or biology, they answered every question winter threw at them. And every night you've ever slept warm, every heated room, every winter jacket, that comfort exists because they refused to let winter win. You are the answer to a 20,000-year question of whether we would survive. They answered yes.